Welcome everyone to my talk about the platform plane and should it go open source. And it's quite good that we just had an introduction in platform engineering, and in this talk we now will see an implementation of such a platform. This talk will be a little bit different because you see there is a question, should it go open source? So I would like to have you sort of as advisors to tell me whether it makes sense to open source that, and also what could be the arguments for the top management. So quickly to myself, my name is Romano Roth and I'm the Chief of DevOps and the partner at Zühlke. You are here at Zühlke in our office. Zühlke is an innovation provider and we are global, over 2,000 people, and we do everything from strategy until the very implementation because we are an engineering company, and this since 1969. So we are quite old. We started with mechanical engineering and then electrotechnical engineering and then, of course, software engineering. And I joined Zühlke 23 years ago as a junior .NET engineer, became then an expert software engineer, then an architect, and finally a consultant. And one thing that was always at my heart is, how can we continuously deliver value? How can we automate things? And when that whole DevOps movement started, I jumped right on top of that, became one of the organizers of the DevOps Meetup Zurich, which is a monthly meetup we are doing. We have over 2,000 people there. Of course, only 50 are coming each time. And I'm also one of the organizers of the DevOps Days Zurich. And the DevOps Days Zurich is a yearly 2-day conference. The next one is next week. It's completely sold out. And these DevOps Days, they are all around the world in all of the big cities. And I am the president of the DevOps Days. Now you see, DevOps lies very close to my heart. This is also why I have my own YouTube channel with over 250 videos all around DevOps, of course, platform engineering, architecture, and of course also leadership. I'm also writing currently my own book about the cybernetic enterprise, where we bring technology, processes, and organization together. I hope I can release it this summer. It's quite tough to write a book, I can tell you. I'm also a lecturer at the HSLU for digital transformation, for enterprise architecture, and of course at DevOps. And in the projects, I work for different companies in different industries doing DevOps transformation, platform engineering, and currently I'm the product manager of that platform plane that I will show you. Just a quick reminder, because as you can see, DevOps lies very close to my heart, but also to the heart of Vision. And Vision, and together with Zühlke, we are doing the DevOps in Switzerland 2025 report. We're doing that already quite for a long time. And surprise, surprise, this time AI and platform engineering will be the focus. So if you could please also fill out that survey. There is, of course, also a prize draw, so you could win some very nice prizes. I think it's a Puyo voucher and a DigiComp, a DigiTech voucher. And with that, quickly to the agenda. First, I will quickly introduce you to the platform plane. Then we have a demo of that platform plane. And then I would like to have a discussion with you, should we open source that? Just that you have that in mind, these are the core questions that I have to you after my talk. Should we open source it? Why? Why not? What are the potential benefits and risks, and how can we effectively convince management to support open sourcing? Okay, the last one is sort of the key questions which I have in that regard. So what is the platform plane? It is exactly that what we just saw in the previous talk, and you also see that picture, which is I think from Gartner. This is a developer platform, but it is much more than a developer platform because it spans from ideation until the very production, and I will show you that in a minute. Quickly to the history, roughly 2 years ago, LGT, which is a Liechtensteinische bank in Liechtenstein, a private bank, came to us and they said, hey, we would like to build a platform, and we heard that you have built in the past quite some platforms, but we don't want it to build for our own. We want to do a shared investment because we think you and also other companies can benefit from such a platform. So we together built this platform plane that you will see, and it is built on top of the best of breed of the tools, which I will also show you in a minute. The interesting thing when we talk about platform engineering and platforms, usually we tell or we heard the term IDP, which is Internal Developer Portal. Now, a platform, in our opinion, is much more than only a developer portal. And what you can see here is, here you see cloud and here you see on-prem. Here you see the different environments like test, integration, and especially production. And here you see the development. And what we have built is a platform which runs in the developer cloud, so in dev, in the cloud, where external developers and also internal developers can access that platform. So all of the applications of LGT and also at Zühlke we use it, but a different instance of the platform are built outside of the bank in the cloud. So this is the developer cloud, or the IDP when you want to use that name. But then you have the same platform in production, in the cloud, and you have the same platform on-prem, where part of these applications also run. And you have a continuous delivery pipeline, which brings these packages into production and also on-prem into production. And that's a quite interesting aspect, because when you are doing that, then you can use the same pipelines and also the same tools in development and in production, and this reduces massively the friction. How does the architecture look like? Here you can see the different people that are using that platform. You see we have, of course, a command line and a CLI and, of course, that portal. But then you use the tools directly. So we don't hide away any of the tools. You just use them. Then you see that part where usually, and we just heard it, Backstage comes into play, the internal developer portal. And you can see here different components, and you maybe recognize what we have done there. We used domain-driven design. We said, okay, when we want to build such a platform, what are the domains? And we created them. What Backstage, for example, misses is then everything that comes down here. So the whole provisioning and automation, which we also just saw, this is something that usually in Backstage is missing, and many of the people that are, or companies that are using Backstage are quite surprised when they see, okay, this is something they need to do. The interesting thing starts down here. You can see we integrate the tools, and we don't integrate the tools directly with each other, because that's another problem that many companies are doing. They integrate the tools that way together, but we integrate them always over the platform. Why are we doing that? You maybe recognize that symbol down there, which is GitLab. GitLab makes roughly minus 50 million every quarter, but they have quite some investors. But the CEO, he does not want to continue. So it's quite usual that that company will be sold. If it's Google that buys that company, then everything is good. If it's Broadcom, then we are fucked. and then you want to go away from that tool. And this is another important aspect. You need to build a platform where you are able to exchange also some of the tools. So what we did is we created unified integration blocks for repository, which is a domain, and then an adapter for GitLab and one for GitHub. And so we can just play Lego with all of these tools that you see there. Also for Vault, which we also discussed, we can integrate everything as long as it has an API. That's the important thing. And the whole concept is not something that we have invented. It's the so-called floating platform concept. And Gregor Hoppe has created a very good book. I can absolutely highly recommend that, the Platform Strategy book. And a floating platform is a platform that floats on top of the tools of the DevOps platforms and the cloud. And you just integrate all of these things into your floating platform. And that's the important thing about that. When we look at the technology stack that we are using, we recognize quite a lot of technologies that the previous talk also covered already, including, of course, Crossplane. And what you can also see, we use quite a lot of open source tools in that platform. And with that, let's go into a demo of that platform so that you can see what we have built and how does that look like. So here you see now the welcome screen, which a developer sees when he logs into that. Here, down here, you would see the spaces. You see that there is a blurring in there. That's because there are customer names, and we are here sort of in the demo mode where we just see these two things. One of the most important things is, of course, we also have the dark mode. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So I see you buy it, huh? We go to the white mode because that's a little bit better for demos. I go to the administration area. Usually you don't have access to the administration area. And here we are now in the Zulu plane, which is the Zühlke plane, the Zühlke instance. And when you are doing projects with us and you don't have your own platform, then it's most likely that we will use the platform plane to develop your project or your product. That's also why you see that 445 users are on that. We have 14 partners, I come to that in a minute, and 22 spaces and 15 clusters that are working down here. You also see here FinOps, so you would see here the costs and also the costs of each one of the projects. Partners. Partners is also a very important concept, because what you want to have when you have such a platform, you want to invite other companies to use it. So in the example of LGT, they have different vendors and they want the different vendors to use that platform. In our case, we of course also have customers, and we invite these customers then directly to this platform. How do we do that? We use at the moment Azure Entra ID for that. So they can bring their own identity and they get included. At the moment, we are working with Keycloak so that we also extract that out of Azure and that we can use whatever we would like to have. The important thing here is that bring your own identity is, in my opinion, a very important thing, and also that when you have such a partner, then you also create an owner, and that owner can onboard and offboard other people, which means that you can onboard someone and within a second he or she gets access to all of the tools which are integrated in the platform and to the repositories, and you can offboard someone in the evening and within a second he or she loses access to everything, which is quite revolutionary. Just now I'm in a project in a bigger company, and it took me roughly 3 weeks until I got access to everything, which is not so cool. when we come to the spaces, a space is nothing else than a network zone. We use the hub-spoke network pattern in here, and in there you can do whatever you want. So every product gets a space, and they can have as many products in there or projects as they want. Usually we say just have one, and they can create virtual machines or Kubernetes clusters in there. But let's go in one of these spaces, the platform space. The platform plane is built with the platform plane. Eat your own dog food. As a developer, I see the tools that are used in this space. I can go to repositories, and I can click on one of the repositories, and immediately I'm logged in with single sign-on to that repository. Now, when we have a platform, then it gets very interesting, because everything is now integrated into that platform, which means also the source code repository. And security is a very important thing, so DevSecOps. So what we are doing is we are scanning the repositories with Trivy for vulnerabilities. And this is fully automatically, so the developer does not need to do anything. This will be fully automatically done with every one of the repositories. Also, he or she does not need to care about any credentials. This is fully automatically, and it's stored in our case in a vault. But if you need some credentials, you could also get them here. Now, when you have built, another thing is you of course can create a repository, and here you can also select a template, a golden path template, if you like. Now, when we have built our software, usually you create a container. Sometimes you create also packages for legacy applications like Maven, NuGet, or npm packages. But let's go to the registry. Here we see all of the container images. We can, of course, here go to this Argo CD operator. And one of the things that we see here is we see all of the versions. We see again here the vulnerabilities and, of course, also the violations. And then we see the layering. This is something we have built for some vendors that didn't have that much knowledge about containerization. They made quite big containers, and we showed them that it's not the problem of the platform, it's their problem. And then on a Friday, we thought, yeah, let's also implement an AI to analyze these containers. And that's quite cool, and that's something, it's very impressive. But actually, it's something you can do within 8 hours when you have such a platform and you have the APIs, because then you can build on top of it and you can just play Lego. What we also have is the provenance feature, so that you can go and have a look who has created that image or who has introduced this vulnerability. And then we are coming to the heart of this platform. This is the Kubernetes cluster itself. We see here nicely all of the applications. We can click on that chat application. We are using GitOps. So in the background, we are using Argo CD for the deployment. Again, you have the application violations and the application vulnerabilities here. And we can open the log files. And here we have integrated Grafana and Prometheus. You have all of the log files. And of course, we also use, for example, Tempo, where you get that nice service graph fully out of the box. And of course, you have predefined dashboards that are already there. So as a developer, I don't need to do anything. I can just use that platform, deploy my application into this cluster, and everything is automatically there. We just grab everything that comes to the standard out. Of course, you can also analyze the log files. Oh, here we don't have any log files. Yeah, you could analyze the log files. The service catalog. This is cross-plane that you are seeing here, just in a nice way. Here, the developer can select, for example, a database, or as you can see, Azure OpenAI, for example, so that you can use AI in a governed way. The important thing is you can select everything. You don't need to do anything about passwords or backups. This is all done by our platform. And of course, down here, the important thing, it's not click ops that we are doing here. You can create your template, and that would also be always our recommendation. Exactly. With that, I quickly want to show you the dashboard here, where the developers then can edit their own space. They see their costs, so FinOps. They also see their CO2 emissions, and they can administer their roles and everything. I also told you that the platform spans into production. That's quite an important thing, in my opinion, because what we created here is you can create releases, which means in the developer cloud, you create the release, and the production clouds that we have, where the platform runs, they are grabbing into the dev cloud, and they are getting these releases. And then, especially in financial institutions, a release manager can say, okay, we accept that release, and then it gets deployed into production. And you can also see when we are doing such a thing, we always give in all of the vulnerabilities, and in the future we will also have the test evidences in there. So this just a short demo, and now I would like to go to the discussion. Would it be worth to open source that? What do you think? Hands up who thinks that we should open source that.
For whom? Worth for whom?
For whatever. The world.
Yeah.
So, well, why? Why should we open source that?
Why do you want to open source that?
I?
Yeah, why?
I'm just thinking about open sourcing it at the moment. But the thing is, we have quite a lot of clients that told us, yeah, it would be nice if you would open source that so that we can test that.
Depends on who asks the question. If you look at the CNCF and all the projects, the reason why everything's open source is because it's a land and expand model. So like GitLab is a good example, or Terraform. You know, you use it, you create developer for, they kind of, let's say, take the drug, and then it's implemented now in everyone's infrastructure, and bam, professional services partners on top. So they know that they're only investing ahead of this from the business model because they know potentially there's this huge prospect that now we can license it and everything. So I mean, because in the end, I mean, developers need to get paid. I mean, open source isn't charged. And so that's why I always think, should we open source it or not? It's like, why? Why do you want to open source it? And I could imagine the client needs to get technical validation that this is what we need. So it makes total sense. Before an NDA and everything, here you go, GitHub link, enjoy. But then at what point does the open source stop? Because if you have this management thing, I mean, why do you have to convince management? I mean, it's 2025, you should get it, you know? So you should convince the wrong one.
Yeah, they should get it.
Yeah, but if they don't get it, then you're selling it to the wrong people.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that's also where, you know, the people who need to be convinced about this is that, can I tie a contract behind this open source? You know, who's taking the liability? Because when I looked at, like, years ago when HashiCorp would sell Terraform, or Terraform Cloud, or Enterprise, they would basically say, oh, the open source stuff is not reliable and everything. I was like, hold on a sec. There's more eyeballs on the code when it's open source than it is if I invest in something proprietary.
Fully agree.
Single vendor risk, exactly this GitHub thing. You know, so managing your telling them, look, wider community, one of the big guys can take it because it's no longer learned this from Broadcom. It's not the days where someone doesn't get fired for hiring IBM. Sorry, you got fired for hiring VMware. You know what I mean? And this is where this management thing, it starts to change. So that's the question I'd be asking, is at what point do you open source stuff, but at what point do you start to, let's say, put a price on reliability, on expectation management?
Okay.
Point two things.
No.
Yeah, I work for Zühlke.
Yeah.
So ultimately, open sourcing something makes only sense when you get a community behind it. Otherwise, it doesn't help you anything. Yeah. So if you're absolutely convinced that the community will take it on and will develop it further, and there is nothing better out there already, then it makes sense to open source it, because with the community, you will get more developers than you would ever be able to pay.
Okay. That's a good point.
That's the only reason why you would want to open source something.
No.
Otherwise, if you want to earn money with it, I mean, doing it for charity or fun is a totally different story, but you're a company, you're not a charity.
Yeah.
You want to earn money with it. So for you, open sourcing makes only sense if you're convinced the community will take it on and will benefit from their development.
That's true, but there's also acceptance. When you open source something, you get more people using it. It's not just whether you can get more developers.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm trying to say. So it needs to be interesting to more than 5 people. Yeah?
But not just to the developers. I mean, companies need to be able to accept it too. Management needs to be convinced to buy it or just use it. Adopting it costs money. Have you looked at your revenue opportunity with this versus how much it's going to cost you to maintain long term? Because that's an important ROI thing.
Yeah, well, we looked
The
at...
ROI is probably better, I would guess, if you outsource it, regardless of open source it. Is my guess. Because that looks like a lot of maintenance. I mean, you've gone down Azure DevOps on steroids in some areas. Right? Azure DevOps is dying because of like maintenance. It seems. So my guess is you need to think very clearly about the ROI on keeping it versus open sourcing.
Exactly, and there is quite an interesting thing about that. At the moment, the ROI is actually better of not open sourcing it.
Because you're early and you need to predict then how many clients are going to use it. Right? So you're making some assumptions. You need to validate that stuff.
What about otherwise, like open sourcing it partially? Because I'm thinking concretely about examples like Bitwood, and there might be cases where people are like attracted about using it because of the open source part, but they're interested into getting it with some support. And on the other side, they might be interested, or at least the community might be interested into developing for it, because as we saw, you're integrating many things, and there are for sure many products which cover the same use cases and that you alone can't integrate. And therefore, maybe also the programmers of this solution might be interested into integrating that products. And I was also thinking about worst case scenario, what could happen that maybe part of your code gets ported into another project.
Sure.
And then you can still, you already know part of the code base, and maybe you can join them and just give your support.
So, a hand there, yeah.
I mean, you say that the TCO is better now, yeah? What are you selling? Are you selling a one-off license or are you selling a subscription?
A subscription at the moment.
So why change it? It would be the same. There wouldn't be a change, because when people buy a subscription, they don't buy the software, they buy the service. They buy the support.
That's true. And with open sourcing, it would be sort of the same, yeah.
They still buy the same thing, unless
you would get more developers potentially if you can create the community.
Exactly, but there's no reason why your revenue should go down unless with some kind of traffic. There are people who run it but don't want to pay you for anything, because they think they can do it on their own. Yeah, but okay, you're not deliberate.
It's the opportunity loss, because in my opinion, if you think that you'll give it away to the developers and they'll run it on their own, they would never anyway hire you, because they want to build their own tools. You can't compare. I think there's no risk, honestly. The risk is you need to invest your time to nurture a community, like you just said, build up the critical mass, and just see how it goes. And that's it. I mean, but again, you need to also build the technical brand behind it. Like this slide, Toby has showed you, everybody showed of the Servil or whatever it's being launched. You have to build a technical brand, and it needs to resonate with developers. It's like Docker. And now Dagger, if you've heard of Dagger, it's doing quite well because some ex-Docker people sit behind it, like Sullivan.
Yeah.
So this is the other thing. Are you ready to stimulate that developer community?
And I think that's quite an effort that you need to do. Also, I would assume that if you want to open source it, you first need to clean up a little bit the code, so that's not embarrassing, potentially.
You never looked at their open source repository.
I looked at some, and that's my point. I don't want to look at something like that.
You're on it.
How much resources do you need to run that solution actually? So how many people, how many weeks to install it, and how many servers below that? So because if you need a team of 5 people and 10 servers, it's probably very hard that the developer will actually deploy it.
Yeah.
If you say you can run it on your laptop, then that's cool.
Absolutely, and that's also one of the points. At the moment, it needs quite some time to set that up because there is not yet that much automated, so many things need to be automatically configured because every customer is different, has different APIs, different tools, and so therefore it takes weeks until it really runs within your premises. And this is something that we need to invest in if we want to open source it.
I just wanted to agree with the previous part that those who want to run it on their own, they will not buy it from you anyway. The question is just, will there be another company that takes over a second of these service roles? And then the question is that a competition, or is that something that will actually boost or increase the market? So that's hard to answer, I would say. So it could be that more companies that provide the same thing is actually good because then everybody is going to using it, same with Kubernetes, etc., for example. But if that would be a competition that takes away from you, then it would be a bad deal. So, but hard to say.
It's a licensing issue.
One thing that comes to mind when you said that at the moment it's quite difficult to set up, it takes a lot of time and effort. That could potentially be a big impediment to building an open source community. My experience from running not an open source project, but an open data project, or trying to run one, is that people who volunteer for these things are, with the best, saying this not negatively, but with the best one word, lazy. They want to do the interesting bit as fast as possible and nothing else, which is fair enough because it's a hobby. So it takes a lot of time and effort to set up, and it's quite fiddly. You may find that it's quite hard to get people to develop it outside of the company.
Yeah.
And at that point, that could affect your ROI calculation for open source versus not.
Yeah. A good point.
I heard 2 items, one of building up the community and one of cleaning up and improving the onboarding process, which is kind of a additional effort needed to open source it. I would argue that's actually the same effort that if you would want to build a proper product out of it, right? You would need to do marketing anyway. You might do different marketing, but building up a community in the end is a marketing problem, right? Finding the right people that have this problem and bringing them together to solve this, right? Which might actually be easier if it's free and open source than, oh, by the way, here's a 10K entry fee to begin with, right? And the same thing with the onboarding, right? If you want to have a proper product, you want to have yourself or your partners or the customers onboard themselves, which means it needs to have this usability also in this process, which isn't necessarily, well, it's the same necessity whether it's open source or closed source, right? It's just, you might get away with less of it if you only do it yourself, right? I would argue the effort is the same whether you build a closed or an open source product. It's just product evolution.
And the interesting thing is, they are completely different paths, in my opinion. And you need to make a good decision. And this is also why I wanted to ask the community. And thank you very much for all of these inputs. Another question?
What about thinking community that already exists? Like become a member of CNCF?
Mm-hmm.
And you can get already some interest from people who never heard about it.
Good point, yeah.
You can get lost in there too. Yeah, of course. I have an open source project, it's called Parsec. Has anyone ever heard of it? No. You? Oh, okay, cool. But there you go. That's a concrete example where, you could go into the whole big like Linux Foundation and everything, and then one out of, 50 just heard of it. And you invest a lot of time, and, it doesn't really go anywhere, but you get 2 or 3 anchor customers like you have here.
Yeah.
But let's say like I thought to demo with 1 or 2 engineers. One of the nice things about the organic thing about going in front of a developer and engineer with an open source tool, hey, look, I found this really cool thing, let's check it out. They don't see a company name behind it. They're like, this looks like a pretty cool community. Yeah, let's try this. And then you're like, oh, by the way, there's a company behind it. And then you get that, okay, maybe if we want to move faster, we can hire them. So it's like Harper is a good example. I think Harper is really cool. Really. There's a few commercial solutions on top of it. And I think they do it well with CNCF to balance developer expectations with, banks, for example, building it out.
Cool.
Who do you think your competitors are?
At the moment, I mean, when you look at the whole landscape, then you can clearly say that Red Hat Developer Portal is one of the competitors. The other one is, of course, Backstage. In my opinion, it's not really a competitor, but usually when we present that at clients, they say, hey, this is Backstage. And we, oh, wait a moment. And the other one is from VMware Tanzu. They have also a huge portal, but I don't remember that name anymore. But it's absolutely expensive, and you don't want to go there. Humanitech, but you also saw that in that picture. They are quite. It's a little bit like Backstage. There is also Port.io. They always cover a small part of it, but never the whole thing as we do, and until production. That's also something that you don't see on the market.
So have you looked at Ranger?
Yeah, we looked at Ranger, but again, it's not that rich, because what we are currently also building is the whole ideation part. We will integrate with Miro, and then you have all of the backlog management of Miro together with Jira, Confluence, and then creating prototypes and potentially then create directly the code out of it. And again, no, Ranger does not go that far.
Not on the ideation.
Yeah.
So think of it this way. You'd be the first to go open source.
Yeah, and these are also the thoughts that I have. But thanks again. That was amazing, and I think we are running out of time, and therefore it's now time to have an apéro. Thank you very much.